It was back to league action for the Bears this weekend. London were calling, and unfortunately, London had taken home the win. This is the world's greatest podcast about the Coventry Bears. This is the Bear Necessities. Note before we begin with this week's episode, in between us recording the show and us putting it together for release, the Bears have announced that they have rearranged the previously snowed off game at home to the York City Knights for Saturday 12th of May, 3pm kickoff at the Butts Park Arena. So we just thought it was worth interrupting our own introduction so you could pop that in your diaries. And we'll see you then, 3pm Saturday 12th of May, Butts Park Arena, York City Knights at home. Now, over to, me. Yes, welcome to Bear Necessities, the podcast all about the Coventry Bears. We live at covbearspodcast.com. We're at covbearspodcast on Twitter, and you can find this show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, and basically anywhere else you get your podcast from. We're sponsored by the Bears Vice Presidents. Our question section is sponsored by York's Tim, and we're all very glad to have you with us listening. I'm one of your hosts, Dave Musson, and joining me as always is my co-pilot and former Bears fullback, Craig Cathcart. Craig, we've just seen the Bears agonisingly slip to a 28-20 defeat to London Skolars, so I normally ask you how you are at this point, but I can guess how you are.
Yeah, I'm a bit, you can probably see from my face, I'm a bit disappointed, but I'm trying to sort of process and look at the positives from the game, which was probably a game the Bears, definitely a game the Bears should have won, but it's one of those days.
Certainly was. Anyway, for you listeners, this week's show is jam-packed to say the least. So naturally, we'll look back over this game against the Skolars, and we'll hear from Bears head coach Tom Tsang later as well. And we'll look ahead briefly to the Bears trip to Keighley next week. And we've also got some of your questions for our own Mr. C. But that's not it. We're also going to be joined later by Troy Perkins to hear about the launch of the Try Tag Rugby sessions in the city that happened this week. And we've got some details of some excellent special guests that are going to be joining us in the coming weeks on this podcast as well. But before all that, though, we've got some bits of news to bring you. So first up, following the success of the supporters coach up to Widnes last week, which we can both say was a lot of fun, there will be another one running for the trip to Hunslet on Sunday the 17th of June. Coach travel is going to cost you £20 for your return travel, and your spot can be booked either in the club shop at home matches or using bank transfer. So for those of you who went up to Widnes, it's the same details as before. If you want more details, email supporters@coventrybears.co.uk for more information. And also, that date is Father's Day, so why not treat your dad and bring him along for a trip to South Leeds Stadium? And I know, Craig, you made that journey last year, and you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, I had a really good day last year. It wasn't the result to be for the Bears last year, but the hospitality there was great. It's a nice little tidy stadium, passionate fans. So they get similar numbers to what we get fans wise, and it was a really good day out. So it's one of our closer away visits. So I would say to everyone, go along, and it'll be a great day. It's a club, Hunslet are a club with lots of history, so that's one thing that struck me was all the pictures of people down through the years that have played for Hunslet. It was a really good day out.
Yeah, I seem to remember when we chatted with the Wolfcast Toronto guys last year, we found out that Hunslet was older than Canada, or something mad like that.
Yeah, they're one of the oldest rugby clubs in the world, I think, Hunslet. So they've I think they nearly got into Super League a few years back. So as I said, it's a club with a lot of history, and they're right on Leeds' doorstep, but they're still going, and they're still going strong.
So a couple more bits of news for you. Last Friday saw the Bears junior sessions kick off properly for the summer. So that's under 7s, under 8s and under 9s. And by all accounts, it was a great evening. And also the club has added training for 13 to 16-year-olds to that session as well. So it's all free, 6:30pm on Fridays at the XL Leisure Centre in Keighley. So if your kids fancy being a future Bear, then definitely get them down there. And in other junior rugby league news, the Bears have been announced as the shirt sponsor of the Black Swans junior rugby league side in Pershore that started early this season, which is great stuff, isn't it? And just further spreading the Bears name in the region.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really crucial that there is a junior setup in different areas spread around the Midlands. I think the amateur game's struggling a little bit in the Midlands, but the junior setup seems to be going quite well. It's essential that the Bears support clubs that start up and want to promote the game amongst juniors, because the main thing and the main difficulty the Bears have is that if someone comes into rugby league late on, then they still have so much to learn in the game, and they're so inexperienced. If you get people playing rugby league from juniors all the way through, then by the time they get to being open age, then they have the experience of playing rugby league. They know what lines to run. They know how to play. Go into the play of the ball. They know how to. They've got that experience, and that's something the Bears sometimes have lacked in recent years.
And lastly, we've got some news about our little podcast. So Twitter has very much spoken, and we will be bringing you a Ron Banks special later this week. So I chatted to Ron about his involvement with the Bears over the years. It's a really good conversation that you won't want to miss. It gives you a lot of information about what happens at the club and what sort of involvement Ron has had. Someone who's been there from the start. And not only that, probably next week we're going to be joined by rugby league historian Tony Collins, who runs the Rugby Reloaded podcast and was part of the recent Codebreakers documentary about Welsh rugby league players on the BBC. So he's going to be chatting to us about the history of the sport in Coventry and in the region. So do keep an eye / an ear out for that. But anyway, that's enough news. Let's get stuck into the Bears game against the Skolars, and we'll start with the story of the game. So as I said, the final score was 28-20 to the Skolars. Skolars hit first, as has been often the case with the Bears, a soft early try against, which was a bit unfortunate. But Bears really came to life after that in the first half, and got back into the game with a try through Dante Morley-Samuels, who was playing on the right wing today. Unusually, Benstead didn't convert, which had us all in shock. But the Bears were looking really good. Jason Bass made a great break from centre, only to be brought down by a World Cup final style tap tackle. And shortly after that, Skolars scored again to stretch their lead to 12-4. But at that point, the Bears really started to up the tempo, and you could sense that they were the fitter looking, certainly faster looking team. They had a lot of joy down both edges. And Bears actually scored 2 more tries before the interval to go in at halftime 14-12 up. So first of all, Cam Pearce-Paul scored. There was another break on the right edge with Dante involved again. Inside pass was touched by a Skolars defender, but fortunately it fell to Cam, who had a fairly easy score. And then Hayden Freeman scored on 26 minutes. A brilliant chip and chase from Paul Emanuele, and they moved the ball left quickly, and Hayden scored in the corner. Again, unusually, Benstead missed a conversion. But didn't matter. Bears went in 14-12 up at half-time, looking very, very good. And they started the second half really well as well. Dante scored his second try 3 minutes into the second half. A sustained spell of pressure from the Bears that sort of created a field position, including some wonderful soft hands from fullback Reece Gant in the build-up. And Dante scored in the corner. Again, another missed conversion, unfortunately. So they maybe score 18-12. Skolars hit back a few minutes later with a try on their own. Penalty sort of gave them field position, and their try scorer ran through on a very good angle and finished. That made it 18-all. But then Bears had a sort of 10-minute spell of pressure down on the Skolars try line, and eventually came away with something in the form of a penalty that Benstead knocked over to take the score to 20-18. And then a controversial couple of minutes. So Skolars had a player sin binned, which obviously put them down to 12 players. But then a couple of minutes after that, to what looked like to everybody in the stadium, a flying, swinging arm punching Jason Bass in the face while he was on the floor, was deemed not even worthy of a sin binning, let alone a red card. And that was a tough one to take. And London kind of dug in from that point. And sadly for the Bears, they scored 2 tries before the end of the game to extend their score to 28-20 as a final score. So they first scored in the left corner, just sort of powered over, and then had a fairly soft try with 5 minutes to go to wrap up the win. It's one of those, the Bears definitely should have won it. We're sitting here after the game not quite sure how they didn't win it, but I guess you just have to chalk it up to experience sometimes. We'll chat a bit more about what we thought of the game in a moment, but first, let's hear the post-match thoughts of Bears head coach Tom Tsang. Well, Tom, Craig and I have just been saying we're not entirely sure how the Bears lost that game. How is it from your point of view?
Yeah, first of all, to say that we're all desperately disappointed with the second 20 minutes of the second half, and probably the first sort of 10-15 minutes of the first half. So from my point of view, just running through the game, just in my head, I don't think we started very well. I don't think we expected the sort of speed of play. Although we mentioned it, we didn't expect the speed of play from Skolars. With all the video that we're seeing, they're quite sort of one-paced and big and can build momentum, but not necessarily quite so explosive. But once we sort of got to grips with that, we felt really comfortable. I don't think we were very resilient on our goal line throughout the game. So anytime they got near our goal line, they looked threatening much more than they should have been, and we just looked a little bit sort of panicked at times defending our goal line, which we need to fix up. Because that's something that we've looked at quite heavily and tried to work on quite a lot, but there's still a lot of work to do on that, I think. But when we picked up the speed of our play, which is what we've been working on to try and sort of match what we've been forced to do in the last couple of games, I thought we looked really good. We got some ruck speed fairly comfortably and fairly easily, just a little bit of variation around the ruck and around the play of the ball got us going forward, and then off the back of it, Steady and Paul managed to sort of, generally speaking, work together pretty well in that first half, and we scored some good tries, and again starting the second half did the same thing, and we just came away from it I think we felt comfortable in the game, and then for some reason, it's quite a common thing, really. I think once you feel comfortable in the game, then you start trying to chance your arm a bit more, rather than sticking to the thing that got you in that position in the first place. And that's just a maturity thing, that they're trying to play the whole playbook every time they get the ball. When really, against this team in particular, what was working well for us was just playing direct with good tempo, trying to get quick rucks, winning some play the balls so that we can play off the back of it, get their big middle unit forwards going on the back foot, and that was what worked for. Then we started going side to side in that middle period of the second half, and that's where we lost it, really. We had so much ball, so much possession up on their goal line, we just kept going sideline to sideline with no real penetration in what we were doing, and I think that just tired us out and allowed Skolars to get the breath back, and then obviously they came back in at the end, and we sort of panicked a bit defensively in the end. So
there were undoubtedly some positives, I think, certainly from my point of view and watching on the sidelines. Dante shifting to right wing and 2 tries and an assist. I mean, you must be pleased with how well he adapted to that new position or different position.
Yeah, Dante he came as an outside back, so he can play centre wing, and he was comfortable. He's being comfortable on either side. He's mixed it up in training, so he hasn't sort of stuck to one side. So we were pretty confident that he'd do a good job for us out there, and Cam, Pierce Paul in the centres, sort of building and going from strength to strength each game. So we knew they'd make quite a speedy, physical combination on the edge, and I thought Cameron was probably one of our best players, and probably had his best game in a Bears shirt so far. So yeah, I was happy with that combination, and Bassi on the left hand side again was his usual self, making good meters and working quite well for us. So yeah, I was happy with the combinations. We lacked some real direction at times, up in Skolars' area of the field.
And there was a couple of a home debut and a full debut for home fans to enjoy today. So Reece Gant at fullback, who sort of bit of a baptism of fire last week, but was tenacious and enthusiastic going forward today, and a full debut for Ashley Bateman as well. How did you think they got on the first time in Coventry?
Yeah, I thought Ash was brilliant for us. He's got a great engine. He's really tough. He's physical. He's no nonsense. He goes forward when he's got the ball, and he hits hard, and he sticks on tackles. Is exactly what we need to add to the other guys that we've got. He's an experienced player, so he knows the things that he needs to do. He talks really well in defence, so yeah, he's a great pickup for us, and I'm sure he'll contribute to better results in the future. And then Reece at the fullback, I mentioned in the programme notes, is He reminds me of Mikey Russell from last year. Small in stature, but really explosive and stronger than he looks in contact. And I think as the pitches dry up, he'll start to be a real threat.
Now, I couldn't go through this interview without mentioning one point in the match that, again, from the stands, felt a bit like a turning point, really, when Bears were still in the lead. And there was what looked like at best a high tackle, at worst a swinging arm into the head of Jason Bass. Firstly, how is Jason? Did he suffer any damage? And second, what were your thoughts on that particular incident? Because it felt like that should have resulted in somebody leaving the pitch at least for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think there was 2 or 3 decisions that could have been dealt with a bit firmer from the referee. Jason's got a big red welt on the side of his face as a result of it. It was clearly, for me, it was a deliberate swinging arm, but we got the penalty. But for me, it was very blatant, and there could have been more. But there was 1 or 2 other decisions. There was a couple of shoulder charges which I felt could have been dealt with a bit harsher. But it's one of those, they even out, or so they say, across the season. So hopefully we'll get some go our way in the future.
And a quick question: I noticed today you were watching from the sideline rather than your usual position at the back of the stand. Was there any reason for that? Did you just get a taste for it last week at Widnes, or did you just want a different view of the game?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a little bit closer and get a better feel for what was happening. Because some of the feedback that we'd had is it was that different people think that there's different things being called on the field, and I just wanted to get a better taste for that and a better feel for that, being a bit close to the action. So yeah, and also Sloanie's done a really good job actually today, being able to sort of see things from a different perspective and send down the information. It's great for his development as a coach to be able to see things and from that little bit of a different area and be able to play a different role. So it was something that we agreed a couple of weeks ago that we were going to do, and I think it worked quite well actually. I think it allowed us to be a bit smoother on the touchline.
And just lastly, obviously trip to Keighley next week, never an easy place to go to, but what are you going to be telling the boys that you want from them next week?
Well, the first thing is I think you said it right at the start of the interview, was that we should have won the game today, and we should have done. And there's no two ways about it. We played a bit dumb at times, but we played some really good stuff as well. So we need to be confident that we are capable. We know we are. I think it's just the case of getting one result, and that will be a turning point for us, and we'll start to build some confidence. But there's a lot of things, positive things that we can take out of this game. And again, as always, there's learning points. We're, like I said, bitterly disappointed. We know that this one got away from us, but we need to dust ourselves down pretty quickly, because Keighley won't be easy. But we know that we're capable of getting a result if we apply ourselves.
Tom, as always, thanks so much for your time, and see you next week.
No, thanks very much.
So that was the post-match thoughts of Bears head coach Tom Tsang after he saw his side slip to a 28-20 defeat at home to London Skolars. So Craig, I mean, we've sort of been saying all episode, we're not entirely sure how the Bears lost that game. There were parts of it that were thrilling. There were some great Bears tries, lots and lots of positives actually, but just crucial. I guess it's the marker of the young side not able to kill off a team when they were there to be killed.
Yeah, the Bears were really, really good at times today. There was some probably some of the best play that I've seen the Bears for the last 2-3 years. Scored some great tries, really give Skolars a good game, and were totally dominant for large parts of the game. I mean, there was a period after half-time where the Bears went 18-12 in front and should have scored more points then. Skolars came back into it. The Bears then, after a real sustained 10-minute period, only came away with 2 points and really should have scored a couple of tries then. They were pounding the Skolars line. It was just disappointing that happened. They obviously weren't helped by the referee. I'm not one to go on about officials, but it has to be said that was some of the worst refereeing I've seen in League One this season. And
that swinging arm on Jason Bass, not only was it clearly an offence that should have at least been a sin bin, but at the point of the game, if that would have been 2 Skolars players in the sin bin at that point, or 1 in the sin bin and 1 sent off. Bears were winning at that point. That I feel like had a player left the pitch for that incident, I think the Bears would have gone on to win.
It was a turning point, definitely. It gave the Skolars a fresh impetus because they knew they'd got away with one.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff going on all day though around the play of the ball. There was lots of niggly stuff going on the play of the ball. The Bears were constantly being slowed down when they were trying to play quick ball. Skolars got away with a lot on the offsides and a lot of lying down. The markers were pretty much never square. It was one of those, as I said, the referees have got a tough job. I don't want to go on about it and say that's the reason the Bears lost, but it certainly didn't help. And as I say, I think Skolars will go away tonight thinking, how did we get away with that? They really probably didn't deserve to win, although I have to say fair play to them, and they hung on in there and then did enough in the end to win, but they'll find themselves fortunate. The Bears, I think we can probably call it inexperience. They really were on top for large parts. There's some really good individual performances, and actually defensively as well, played really well at times. But I think there was a bit of a change in that what was really working in the first half were the way that the Bears were spreading the play and creating space on the edges. That just didn't happen in the second half. And the other thing as well is there was no real set plays happening, and the set plays were really working in the first half. So I'm not quite sure what happened. I think the Bears players found themselves breaking the line quite a lot, making decent yards, so just started to play a bit more off the cuff and found the Skolars really, in fairness, defended well at that point and and repelled the Bears attack. But it's one of those, I have to say I'm really disappointed, but on reflection, it's one of those games where we measure against how the Bears did against Skolars last year. Skolars came up here last year and put a lot of points on the Bears, and we've got to look at this year and think probably should have won that game. So eventually the results will come. They definitely will come, and this is, I think, a much better squad than we had last year, playing much more as a team.
Yeah, we say it every week, don't we? Yeah,
and as I said, as you said earlier, played some thrilling rugby at times, and the crowd really got behind them again today. That was a real plus point. We got a rendition of the Dante Morley Samuel song as well.
We got it twice, didn't we?
Yeah.
I mean, he looked great in an unusual, not necessarily an unusual position for him, but for Bears fans, we're not used to seeing him on the wings. He looked great, and I think Reece Gamp making his home debut, Ashley Bateman making his club debut, both showing great potential to be real mainstays in this Bears side, and we're building a nice little contingent of Welsh players to supplement the Midlanders, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, so we got the Midlands-based players, but we got a Welsh contingent who I think, we've in some ways benefited from South Wales' demise. West Wales is actually quite far for those guys to travel, so, and with Gloucester gone as well, we've managed to pick up some really good players, and those guys, I mean, I think Coventry's had a long tradition of Welsh people living here. There's a big Welsh community, and those guys really have become a real valued part of the squad, and they add some much needed experience as well. I mean, it's a real good setup, I think, we've got this year with those guys and the Midlands-based players. As I said, you can really see it with some of the plays that the guys are doing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll let the Skolars game go to bed there. We'll mark it off as one of those, but we definitely should have won. Anyway, still to come. Yeah. We're going to look back at the launch of Try Tag Rugby in the city this week with Troy Perkins, but first, it's time to Ask Mr. C. So Ask Mr. C is a part of the show where I put your questions to my co-host. It's sponsored by York's Tim. If you've got a question you want to ask, tweet it to us at Covbears Podcast using hashtag AskMrC, or use the contact form at covbearspodcast.com. So we've got a few good questions this week, Craig. Starting off from Tim Griffiths, the man with the voice of Butts Park Arena. He says, given that we've played Bradford and Widnes, which other old name would you like the Bears to play in a future game?
Well, unbelievably, this season we have played Leeds, Widnes and Bradford, and I never thought I would have said that. I think for me, the big one would be to have Wigan, play against Wigan. That would just be fantastic. Yeah, I mean, there's other teams that it would be great to play against. Warrington. I think one of the whole teams as well would be really great to play them. But I think to play Wigan would be a dream. I know Bears CEO Alan Robinson's a Wigan fan as well, so for him, and that's why Wigan are the reason he got into rugby league in the first place. Watching them play in the Challenge Cup. Playing Wigan would be the ultimate, I think, for the Bears.
Okay. Next up is a question from our sponsor, York's Tim. So it's a question about Challenge Cup. So who are we supporting in the next round? Plucky little Widnes, who knocked us out, or Whitehaven, because they're the last survivors from our division?
Without a doubt, it's got to be Whitehaven. Mm-hmm. I think they're representing League One. They had an amazing result, beating a Championships club 38-0 in the last round. Yeah. They've got who have they got in the next? They've got Catalans away. So York pushed them really close. It'll be a tough game for Whitehaven going there, but their fans and their players, they'll really enjoy the experience of going playing there. That's got to be massive.
I don't think the Catalan players will enjoy playing against their middles either, given what we saw here a few weeks ago. Yeah,
and I mean, other than that, I have no real preference. I just think that the Challenge Cup is an amazing competition. A lot of people try to devalue it, I think, sometimes, but it's an amazing competition, and I just want to see a really competitive cup this year with a really great final.
And lastly, on the questions, this is probably the best one, possibly the best one we've had so far this season. So it comes from Rachel Presley. So Magic Weekend Summer Bash. How about League One Sevens Day? On the Wembley Sunday or the Bank Holiday Monday after a Challenge Cup final, held at the Butts Park Arena. And if it got established, it could become part of Wembley weekend like the Skolars' traditional Friday night game, and it would get Cov on the National Rugby League map. And she's even added, hell, even get the Broomfield to run a Rugby League beer fest alongside it. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I'm just going to quickly say, great idea.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic idea. I think I'd like to see like a nines tournament. There's the Rotterdam Nines, which is a tournament with amateur rugby league clubs, and I think they have about 4 or 5 Dutch teams that play in that, and then they get some teams travelling over from England for it. That's a really successful tournament. There used to be the Kilkenny Nines, which I think the Bears actually went to a couple of times. Mm-hmm. So for me, probably a nines tournament would be a great idea. I think the Butts Park Arena would be a perfect place to host it. And yeah, I think League One often gets overlooked. I think League One needs its own event to help promote this wonderful league that the Bears are playing in. It's anything that can be done to raise the profile of League One and the teams within it is a brilliant idea for me. If we could get it off the ground, that would be amazing. But
I'm just thinking League One Nines 2019, sponsored by their Necessities.
Yes, yeah.
As long as we don't have to pay for it.
As long as the sponsorship doesn't cost anything, and maybe the RFL could step in and put some money towards it. But who knows? It does sound like a brilliant idea. But I think thinking more widely, I think something like that, which is thinking a little bit outside the box, is something that rugby league needs. I think Summer Bash, which has the championship clubs, is rumoured to be struggling a little bit this year. I think without Bradford's ticket sales that they had last year. Magic Weekend, I think, still doing okay, but perhaps feels a little bit dated. So I'd love to see something that the League One clubs could get involved in. It would be a fantastic weekend for everyone involved.
Yeah. Well, some great questions there. If you've got your question you'd like me to ask Mr. C, then, as I said, tweet it to us at CovBearsPodcast or use the contact form at covbearspodcast.com. And this section is sponsored by York's Tim. Okay, so earlier this week, we saw the launch of Try Tag Rugby in the city, and Craig and I went to the mixed session on Thursday. We'll talk about that in a moment. But first, let's hear from Troy Perkins, former Bears player, of course, former Bears coach, but also one of the men responsible for running the Coventry franchise. So I caught up with Troy after Thursday's session. So Troy, we're back at the varsity after the second of the two taster sessions for Try Tag Rugby. So you had the men's league last night and the mixed league tonight. How do you think it's all gone? You've been pleased with the turnout?
Yeah, I've been really pleased. We've had a really good response from people with plenty of rugby experience through to people that haven't touched a rugby ball. And that's what, how it's worked well in London is that it's catered for all abilities and shapes and sizes, and that's what we've found up here as well. Been very, very pleased with tonight, the mixed session. People have travelled a fair distance to get here, and the best thing is that we had a couple of people that have actually played tag rugby in London in the Try Tag Rugby competitions. So they were here, they had a bit of experience, and they already loved the sport, and that's already been infectious on a lot of the other people that were there tonight.
Yeah. So in terms of the differences between Try Tag Rugby and, say, touch rugby that people might be familiar with, are you able to just quickly explain the story? Because it's a sport that started in Australia, isn't it, and came over here a few years ago?
Yeah, it's massive in Australia. It's called OzTag in Australia, and it's played by so many people. Like you'll drive past big commons fields in Sydney, and nearly every night there'll be either touch tournaments or OzTag tournaments. So it's just as big as touch over there. Here it's starting to get big in London, where there's a lot of expats that are used to playing that game. I think the most appealing thing for me and the biggest difference is that you can kick. Okay, you can kick on any tackle as long as it's below the shoulders. It's obviously a lot clearer when you get caught. So in tag you get tagged, in touch you get touched, but in touch it's still a bit debatable. People don't feel themselves getting touched or whatever. Where tag's very clear cut. The tag's on the floor. You've been tagged. You go back. You play the ball. It also encourages dummy halves to have a bit of creativity, because if they get tagged, there's no turnover as well. So they can utilise the 6 tags. But I just think it's okay. It may not be as fast around the ruck in touch, where people can just run up and voluntary touch. Here, that people have actually got to work hard to tag you, and you've got to work hard to get away from them. Where touch you can just submit and get touched. So they're the main differences. But I think it's a higher skill level, and it's a lot more like rugby league as well.
Yeah. And you say you explained a bit about how it's grown in this country. It's been quite incredible, hasn't it? It's gone from like 4 teams to nearly 600.
Yeah. So the guy Phil Brown who started it, and I've known him since he started it, and he had 4 teams in Finsbury Park on a Wednesday night, and at times, especially the first few weeks, he said he got a bit disillusioned, and because it was a new sport, and he was getting let down by people, and it took a bit of time for people to get the word out there, and now it's flourishing. He was up here last night for our launch of our first taster session, the men's, and he told me they got 32 teams playing on Clapham Common on a Saturday, which is, for me, is massive. Saturday, where there's so many other sporting events going on. There's rugby being played. There's football. There's so much to do in London on a Saturday. He's got 32 teams playing, which is 400 plus people, and it's played all day. So it's really grown. I think it had a lot of expat influence early on, but these days the word's grown, and there's predominantly a British playing the game rather than the expats that played it in the early days.
Yeah. And in terms of plans for Coventry and Warwickshire, so the league, the men's league and the mixed league start on the 8th and 9th of May. You're saying it runs for 8 weeks, and then there's going to be another league.
Yeah, the leagues will carry on. The leagues will carry on. We didn't want to make the league too long, because obviously other people have other commitments. So we'll do it in 8-week blocks, so people can come and go. You may have some that play the first 8 weeks. They may disappear because they've got holiday commitments or whatever. They might join again in the autumn league and whatever. So they're 8-week blocks, and it's the beauty of it. You can be an individual, sign up, and we will put you in a team, and you'll meet new people via that route, or you could have a group of mates that you want to play a competitive sport with, and this is a great opportunity. They don't have to be all 6'2" and 17 stone and have to deal with the contact or anything like that. They can be people that have come from entirely different sports as well. So that's the beauty of it. And my wife had another commitment tonight, but I was going to get my wife down to the taster session, who's never touched a ball in her life either, So, but they'll be here next week when we're going to hold a training session and another taster session because it went so well. And if we can get all those people an opportunity to have another training session, it's only going to benefit them when the league starts the week after. So, I think it can be massive, and I wouldn't have got involved in the business if I didn't. But it's spreading the word, getting people to try and as you know, the best form of advertising is word of mouth. And once it gets out there, I think the plans are to have venues all over Coventry and Warwickshire and even Solihull. So Rugby, Nuneaton, Stratford, Leamington, and Solihull, and that's the plans, in the next 18 months to 2 years. But we've just got to focus on Coventry, which is where we're based, and take it from there. But I've got no doubt it will succeed. But as I said, it just needs people to experience it and maybe not, especially being a big rugby union area, having those preconceived ideas that that's very rugby league orientated. But it can only can only improve your skill, and as I said, there's the variations there are, I think, are better for those non-contact rugby.
Yeah. And if people listening who perhaps weren't able to make the taste session but still want to get involved, if they fancy it, what's the best way of finding out more information?
Yeah, so they can email me on coventry@trytagrugby.com. They can go to our website, Try Tag Rugby, and we will be in the Excel Centre next Wednesday night for another taster session, and hopefully have even better numbers and new faces, and start to get a real good base of players, and also quite a good social scene after the game, which is one of the big selling points in London as well, is that it's not about the 40 minutes that you play, it's the people that you meet beforehand and have a pint with afterwards, and get to know outside of your normal circle of friends.
Well, great. Well, Troy, thanks for your time. Best of luck with it, and look forward to seeing how it grows over the season.
Yeah, thanks very much. Appreciate that.
So that was Troy Perkins telling me how it went with the first couple of sessions of the Try Tag Rugby franchise in the city. So Craig, you and I were there on Thursday for the mixed session. You unfortunately did your hamstring within the first 10 minutes, which was a bit of a shame. But it was good fun, wasn't it? Highly recommended for anyone who fancies chucking a ball around without the danger of getting hurt in the sense of getting battered by somebody.
Yeah, I was actually really enjoying it. It's I don't think I've picked up a rugby ball in about 10-15 years, so it was really good fun. It was a mixed session with a fantastic turnout. I think there was well over 30 people, maybe up to 40 people there, and varying skills and abilities, but everyone was really enjoying it. And then disaster struck when I tried to stretch my legs a bit too fast. I think I want to be back raring to go fairly soon. It's thankfully not too serious, but I hope my battered old body can cope with it. I now know why I had to give up playing rugby. I'm just completely injury prone, I've decided.
and as Troy was saying in his interview there is still opportunities for people who want to register either as an individual or as a team. Strongly urge you to get involved. And what do you reckon? Shall we, once you're recovered, shall we aim for starting a Bare Necessities team and see how we
definitely want to have a Bare Necessities team. I think one thing that struck me about it, and I've played touch rugby in the past before. I used to do it with mates and did it for training and things like that, but with having the tags, it actually makes it feel a bit more like you're actually playing rugby league or rugby. I know it's not an official rugby league sport, Try Tag, but it feels like you're playing rugby league because there's play of the balls and everything else, and there's 6 sets. So it really does feel different, and for anyone that's no longer playing or struggled with injury and doesn't want to go back to playing full contact, I'd definitely recommend it.
Yeah, definitely. So, we'll get a Bare Necessities team formed and we'll keep you updated on the podcast as the season goes on, and we'll let you know quite how badly we embarrass ourselves over the season. Almost done for this episode, but we shouldn't sign off before a quick look ahead to next weekend's trip to Keighley. Tough. There are no easy games in this league, really, but Keighley away is a tough one. But Ben Stead back on home turf, so he might be able to guide us around the field a bit. And obviously there is a bit of a special relationship between the Bears and the Cougars now, because the Bears had I won't call it an honour, but the Bears were the first team to go and play there after Danny Jones died a couple of years ago, and were part of that overwhelming occasion. But yeah, it's a tricky tie going there, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't really know what to expect, because they had a bit of a mixed start to the season. They had a couple of, quite bad results, and it looked at that time, I was thinking the Bears could potentially go there and get a result. The last few results that they've had, though, they've had quite convincing wins. So I'm not really sure what to expect, what sort of Keighley team is going to turn up and how it's going to go. I hope that the Bears take the positives out of today and don't go into that game still feeling disappointed with how the result went. I think we know that the potential is there in this squad, and we know that they're doing so many things right. So they can go there and they can get results. They just need to go there with confidence and play to the best of their abilities. The trip to Keighley is going to be, it's one of those grand old rugby league clubs, and the Bears always enjoy going there. And as you said, there is definitely a connection there now with the Bears and Keighley. So either way, it's going to be a great day out. As I said, if the guys can just play to the best of their abilities and be confident, they can really give Keighley a good game.
Well, we'll be back next week to see exactly how the Bears got on that trip to Keighley. And as I say, we'll likely play our interview with rugby league historian Tony Collins on next week's show as well. And then we've got lots more exciting things in the pipeline and lots more of the season to go. And hopefully this summer sport will actually feel like summer at some point soon.
Yeah, I feel like my fingers are about to drop off now. So, I think we both need to go in and get warm.
Probably a good time to end this week's episode. Thanks as always for listening. Of course, we live at covbearspodcast.com. Hit us up on Twitter at covbearspodcast. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you've got any suggestions. And we will be back next week.